On my birthday, the world didn't fall apart. It snapped clean in half. One moment, my rich grandfather was raising his glass, smiling like nothing was wrong. The next, he asked, "So, how do you spend your $5,000 monthly allowance?" I blinked. Hard. What money? The room froze. My parents turned the color of spoiled milk. And when Grandpa slowly looked at them and asked, "Then where did it go?" I realized I wasn't just hearing a question. I was hearing the sound of my entire childhood breaking open. My name is Arden Vale, and this is the day I learned the people who raised me weren't protecting my future, they were spending it. But before I share my story with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple hi in the comments so I know you're listening, or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes even the smallest connection makes a story feel less lonely. And if you want to stay with me through every truth, every twist, every piece of the life I had to rebuild, please subscribe to the channel. It means more than you know. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. On my birthday, the world didn't explode. It cracked clean, quiet, unforgiving. 1 second, my rich grandfather was lifting his glass in the warm glow of skyline ember, smiling like this was just another polished family dinner. The next, he asked, "So, Arden, how do you spend your $5,000 monthly allowance?" I blinked hard. What money? My parents went pale in perfect unison, and when Grandpa slowly turned toward them and asked, "Then where did it go?" I felt something inside me drop the way ice breaks on a frozen lake. My name is Arden Vale, and this is the night every lie I grew up with started to unravel. Hours before that moment, it was just me and my tired little studio in Silver Lake walls, peeling floorboards, groaning, the heater rattling like it was begging for retirement. Winter in Denver bites harder when you're behind on rent and pretending you're fine. I sat cross-legged on my futon refreshing job boards, as if the universe might suddenly hand me a miracle. My last freelance contract had fallen through my credit card, hovered near maxed out, and my landlord had left a passive-aggressive reminder in my mailbox about timely payments. Nova. My roommate padded out of her room in an oversized hoodie and immediately started making hot cocoa without asking a single question. That was her magic silent comfort. She pushed a chipped mug toward me. "Drink. You look like a haunted raccoon." I huffed out a laugh. "My bank account agrees." She hesitated. "Maybe you could call your parents." I snorted. For what advice on how to stop being embarrassing? She didn't push further. She didn't need to. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. My mother's name glowed across the cracked screen. I braced myself. "Arden?" she said, skipping hello. "You haven't forgotten tonight, have you?" I blinked. "Tonight?" She sighed like I'd committed a crime. "Your birthday dinner. Skyline Ember. 7 sharp. If you're late, it reflects poorly on us. And wear something nice, nothing from your loft." I said nothing about the fact that my loft barely fit a folding table and a futon. Before I could reply, she added, "Missing your own dinner would make us lose face," and hung up. So I dug through my closet and found the only dress that wasn't fraying beyond repair, black, slightly faded, bought years ago for a college internship interview. As I zipped it up, I caught my reflection and wondered why appearances mattered more to my family than actual connection. They never asked how I was. They only cared how I looked standing next to them. Skyline Ember shimmered like a movie set, amber lights, glass walls, linen napkins folded like origami. My parents were already seated, gleaming like a couple auditioning for a wealthy power couple commercial. My mother air-kissed me, drowning me in designer perfume. My father gave me a half hug, the expensive watch on his wrist catching the light. They launched into bragging about kitchen renovations, European travel plans, and a new SUV. My dad was test driving, conveniently forgetting he had once scolded me for buying coffee when I was supposed to be saving. No one asked how my work was going. No one noticed I was exhausted. No one saw the cracks. Then everything shifted. conversations lowered, heads turned. And my grandfather, Cassian Vale, a man who hated cities and fancy restaurants, stepped into the room like a winter storm. Tall silver hair matching his wolf-sharp eyes, he walked straight to our table. My mother's smile flickered like a dying light bulb. "Happy birthday, Arden," he said, pulling me into a real hug, the kind that made my throat tighten. We talked softly for a few minutes about my work, my apartment, the Denver cold. My parents stiffened at every mention of my struggles. Then he lifted his glass again, and the edges of the world sharpened. "So how do you spend your $5,000 a month?" And just like that, the ground under me disappeared. Minutes later, the restaurant faded behind us as we were ushered into a private VIP room. The door clicked shut, sealing us inside a space chilled by silence and soft gold lighting. But the atmosphere wasn't warm. It felt surgical, like the truth was about to be dissected. Already seated were Therese Landon, my grandfather's right hand, and Gareth Monroe, the family attorney. Seeing them here confirmed one thing: Grandpa hadn't come to Denver on a whim. He came prepared for war. We took our seats opposite him, lined up like defendants awaiting judgment. Gareth opened a leather folder and slid a stack of documents toward me. "Arden," Grandpa said gently but firmly, "tell me if anything I say doesn't match your reality." My pulse thudded in my ears as Gareth spoke. 8 years ago, when you turned 18, a trust account was established in your name, $5,000 deposited on the first of every month, intended solely for your education, housing, or business opportunities. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I never got any of it," I said. "I worked 3 jobs in college. I lived on ramen and panic attacks. If that money existed, it didn't exist for me." Grandpa's jaw tightened. Therese read from her tablet. Every deposit was withdrawn within 24 hours and transferred to a joint account under Patrick and Bryn Vale. My mother let out a laugh too thin to be real. "We were keeping it safe. Kids waste money." I stared at her. "Safe? You let me struggle for years. Why didn't you tell me?" No one answered. "Itemized transactions," Therese announced. She scrolled, reading each line with unsettling calm. "Maldives, Santorini, a new SUV, American Express payments, a failed wellness startup, luxury furniture, trip after trip, purchase after purchase, almost $500,000 spent." Every memory clicked into place like cruel puzzle pieces: their vacations, their remodels, their designer clothes, all financed by money meant for me. Gareth cleared his throat. "A property in Lone Tree was also purchased using these funds, titled under your parents' names." My father interjected too quickly. "An investment for Arden's future." Grandpa's voice cut through him. "Does she live there? Does she have a key? Does she even know it exists?" When neither answered, he extended his hand. "Keys. Now." My mother's facade shattered. Her fingers trembled as she set the key ring on the table. Grandpa didn't even glance at her. He slid the keys toward me. The metal felt warm, heavy, like it carried every moment of my stolen independence. My mother began to cry, not the messy, aching kind, but the staged kind she used when caught. "We only wanted what was best for you," she whispered. I looked at her through the sting in my eyes. If this is what best looks like, I don't want to know what worse would have been. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating, and in that silence something darker flickered in my parents' eyes. Fear. Not of losing me, but of something else. Something still buried. And for the first time in my life, I felt it clearly. This wasn't just about money. This was about a secret they were terrified would come next. 3 days after the birthday dinner, I walked into Knox Capitol Tower with the same feeling you get when a doctor calls you back after routine tests. I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my parents' faces, drained, frantic, hiding something they couldn't control anymore. My grandfather's message had been short. "Come to my office." We need to finish what we started. The weight of those words stayed with me the entire cab ride downtown. The elevators opened to a quiet hallway lined with glass and steel. When I stepped into the conference room, my parents were already there. They didn't look anything like the glamorous pair who strutted into Skyline Ember days earlier. They looked older, smaller. My father's hands shook when he reached for a cup of water. My mother's mascara was smudged as if she'd tried to make herself presentable and failed halfway through. They jumped at the sound of the door closing behind me. That alone told me this would not be about misunderstandings or explanations. This would be about truth. Gareth Monroe sat across from them with another thick folder. He tapped the cover once. "This is the second layer," he said. "What we didn't get to at the restaurant." I sat down, slowly bracing myself. He opened the folder and slid the first page toward me. "A loan," he said. $40,000. Taken out under your name at Boulder Credit Union. I stared at the document, my signature printed at the bottom. My name, my handwriting, except it wasn't. I felt the same sensation I'd had when I was 12 and saw my reflection in a department store mirror and didn't recognize myself. A split. A hollowing. My father shifted in his seat. We meant to pay it off. It was temporary. My grandfather cut him off with a look that could slice marble. I leaned back and tried to remember every time I was denied an apartment application, every polite email telling me my credit score didn't meet requirements. I had blamed myself. I had worked harder. I had eaten cheaper. And all along, it had been them. Gareth placed down another sheet. "This is an itemized credit card statement." The account was opened with Arden's social security number. Rows of charges blurred before my eyes: designer handbags, spa packages, a staggering bill from a Beverly Hills boutique. My mother swallowed hard. I was going to explain. I raised a hand. "You let me believe I was irresponsible. You told me to budget better. I was living off canned soup while you bought jewelry with my name." My voice cracked right down the middle. Gareth wasn't done. He pulled out printed emails between my parents. At the top was a line that made my stomach twist. "We have to leave before the old man finishes the audit." The date was 3 days before my birthday. My father looked away, jaw tight. My mother closed her eyes like maybe if she didn't see me, I wouldn't see her. Therese spoke for the first time. "We also found 2 one-way tickets to Belize booked under aliases." She placed them in front of me. "Departing tomorrow if the audit had been delayed." Something inside me went still. Not broken, still. Quiet in a way that felt dangerous. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was an obstacle they were trying to outrun. Memories surfaced, slow and painful. My parents taking birthday money for safekeeping, telling me asking about finances was disrespectful, insisting I didn't need to understand adult matters. It hadn't been parenting. It had been conditioning. My grandfather folded his hands. "Arden," he said, "I need to ask this plainly. Do you want to pursue legal action?" The room swayed for a moment. I looked at my parents, 2 people who had raised me, lectured me, scolded me, shaped me, and drained me. I didn't answer out loud, but the question echoed inside me long after I walked out of that tower. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about money anymore. It felt like I was standing at the edge of something darker, waiting to see just how deep the rot went beneath the surface of the family I thought I knew. I landed in Jackson Hole under a wide gray sky, the kind that feels heavy enough to fall on you. The air cut sharper here, thinner, like it didn't have patience for lies. My grandfather had summoned all of us to Vale Regency Lodge, the place where every major decision in our family's history had been made. Driving through the snow-covered pines toward the estate, I felt like I was being pulled into a story that began long before I was born. Inside the lodge was warm but severe dark wood stone fireplace windows framing mountains like stern witnesses. My parents sat at the long conference table looking even more worn than they had in Denver. Their clothes were mismatched, unpressed, like they had dressed in a hurry or stopped trying. My mother kept wringing her hands. My father stared at the table as if numbers were carved into the wood. Gareth opened a new binder. "We continued the investigation," he said. "What we're about to cover includes additional liabilities under Arden's name." He turned the first page. 2 more loans. Combined total $63,000. Overdue. I felt the floor shift again beneath me. I didn't sign anything I said. My voice was steady, but everything inside me wasn't. My father inhaled sharply. "I had no choice," he said. "I'm being sued. The brokerage suspended me last year." We were drowning. The room went dead silent. I had spent a year believing he was working hard, waking up at 5, coming home late. A whole year of pretending. My mother lifted her chin. "We kept things together for the sake of the family name." I stared at her. "You think the family name matters more than my life?" Gareth continued. "There's more. Arden's credit score is below the threshold for most lenders. Past due notices were hidden by rerouting her mail. She was denied apartments because of decisions she never made." I swallowed hard. Suddenly, every closed door in my 20s had a culprit standing right in front of me. Then Therese placed down a folder with my face on it. Not my real face, my photo stolen from social media. "Your mother used your image to run a wellness account," she said. "She sold cleanses and detox kits. The business is under investigation for fraudulent claims." My mother gasped. "I was helping us survive," she insisted. Hearing her use the word "us" made something inside me recoil. My grandfather finally spoke. "Enough." His voice thundered in the wooden room. "You didn't just take her money. You took her name. You took her choices. You took her future." He turned to me. "Arden, speak." I wasn't ready, but I spoke anyway. I told them about missing rent, about crying over declined cards, about losing clients who didn't trust someone with a damaged financial record. I told them about the guilt they planted in me, the shame they nurtured the years I thought my failures were my own fault. As I spoke, I watched their faces, hoping for regret, remorse, anything human. But there was only fear of consequences, not of what they'd done. Therese slid one final envelope across the table. "This isn't financial," she said. "But you should see it." Inside were screenshots of the wellness account. My face. My name. My likeness. Products I'd never touched. Claims I'd never made. Thousands of dollars transferred to an account I'd never heard of. My chest tightened. They hadn't just stolen my money, they had stolen my identity. My grandfather stood signaling the meeting was over. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The truth has deeper rooms." When I stepped out into the cold Wyoming air, the mountains loomed against the sky, immense and unmovable. For the first time, I understood I wasn't just fighting for my finances. I was fighting for the right to own my own story. And some part of me knew, with a clarity that ached, that what lay ahead would break whatever was left of the illusion I once called family. Nova was the first person to hear everything that happened in Jackson Hole. We sat in the back of the rideshare headed home from the airport, Denver lights blurring against the window, and she didn't say a word until I finished. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but steady. "You don't have to keep going, Arden. You can walk away from all of this." I shook my head before she even finished the sentence. "If I don't finish what they started, they'll bury me under their mistakes for the rest of my life." Saying it out loud felt like drawing a line I'd never dared draw before. The next morning, I sat with Gareth and Therese in the small meeting room at Knox Capitol Tower. Piles of folders spread across the table, each labeled with a year from my adulthood, 18, 19, 20, and on. Every year I thought I was beginning my own life, they were quietly consuming it behind me. We started sorting through the deepest layer of documentation. My pulse raced every time Gareth lifted a new file. The first folder held an investment contract. My name printed at the top, followed by a six-figure sum and a failed luxury housing development tied directly to my father. The project was now tangled in allegations of building violations. Legally, anyone listed as an investor could be dragged into the case. "I never signed this," I whispered. Gareth nodded. "We know. But the courts won't know unless we get ahead of it." The fear that washed through me wasn't sharp. It was low and heavy, a realization that my parents' decisions had the power to ruin me, long before I even understood the rules of adulthood. Memories surfaced me at 13, asking what a charge on the credit card bill was, and my father snapping that children shouldn't ask about money. Me at 16 trying to understand where my birthday money went, and my mother telling me to stop being disrespectful. They hadn't been protecting me from the burden of finances. They had been protecting themselves from being discovered. Another folder landed in front of me. Therese opened it slowly. "Your name was used to co-sign a loan for a relative in California." The date was 2 years old. The borrower had vanished. The lender was preparing legal action against me. I sat back, swallowing air. Every piece of paper tightened the noose around my life. And none of it was my doing. "I don't know how to undo all of this," I said quietly. Nova, who had joined us halfway through, squeezed my knee under the table. "You don't undo it," she said. "You cut through it." That night, my grandfather called. His face appeared on my cracked phone screen, the deep lines across his brow shadowed by lamplight. "Arden," he said, "I need to hear from you directly. What do you want?" For a second, I didn't know how to answer. No one in my family had ever asked me what I wanted. My needs were always beneath theirs, my life an afterthought. I looked around my dim studio, the one where I ate instant noodles for dinner, the one where I cried over declined payments, the one where I forced myself to pretend I was grateful to be surviving. "I want my life back," I said. "I want to be the one who decides what happens to me." My grandfather nodded once. "Then, there's something you need to know. I've requested a court order to freeze your parents' assets. To move forward, I need your approval." He paused. "If you agree, there's no repairing what stands between you and them." My hand trembled as he emailed the consent form. Signing my name felt like carving through the last thread tying me to the illusion of family I had clung to for years. But when the ink dried, something inside me steadied. I ended the night with a truth that felt bigger than anything I'd ever spoken. I wasn't the child who stayed quiet because I was told to. I wasn't the girl afraid of my mother's sharp sighs or my father's disappointed glare. I wasn't their shield anymore. I was finally choosing myself. And I knew that by doing so, I had woken the darkest part of my family, and they would not let go without a fight. The first night I spent in the Lone Tree apartment felt surreal. Everything inside was sleek and polished quartz countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors with no scratches. But the beauty of the place didn't feel like mine. It felt like a trophy stolen from me, displayed for them. Like every inch of the apartment whispered, "You could have had this life 8 years ago if they hadn't taken it first." I walked through each room with Gareth's files in hand. Every time I set the papers down, another sheet surfaced with another debt, another unauthorized signature, another line of proof that my parents had treated my identity like a credit card with no limit. The weight of it made my chest tight. Then Gareth showed me a document that made my fingers go numb. My father had signed a temporary mortgage agreement using doctored paperwork that claimed I had approved the loan. If the audit had been delayed just a few more weeks, the bank would have seized the apartment, my apartment, before I ever knew it existed. I pressed my hand to my forehead, steadying myself against the counter. "How many times have I almost lost things I didn't even know I had?" I whispered. No one had an answer. For the next hour, I signed affidavits proving I hadn't authored any of the loan applications or credit lines tied to me. The signatures blurred. My name didn't even feel like mine anymore. It felt like a costume someone else had been wearing for nearly a decade. Nova arrived mid-afternoon with coffee and a stack of my old mail she'd picked up from the studio. She dropped them on the table. "You might want to see this one," she said, holding out a letter from a bank I didn't recognize. The envelope was dated months earlier. Inside was a warning about an overdue balance under my name. I closed my eyes, air draining from my lungs. How many letters like this had my parents intercepted? How many alarms had they silenced for their own benefit? As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed. A long message from my mother filled the screen. She claimed the family's reputation was at stake, that everything they had done was to protect us, that I was tearing us apart. And then came the sentence that froze me. "If you go any further, the truth about the day you were born will destroy you." I didn't know whether to laugh or drop the phone. The words felt like a knife scraped along old wounds. Nova read over my shoulder, her expression darkening. "That sounds like a threat." It didn't just sound like one. It was one. I took the message straight to my grandfather. When he read it, he didn't react immediately. His face was still, but his eyes tightened in a way that made my stomach drop. "There are things, parts of the family's past, that I meant to tell you when you were stronger," he said. "But I didn't expect your parents to weaponize it." He said nothing else. And the silence between us felt heavier than anything we'd uncovered in the audits. Later that night, while snow collected on the balcony outside, my phone rang again. My parents' number. I answered because some part of me hoped they might finally say they were sorry. They didn't. My father begged me to stop the legal process. My mother cried and said if I didn't back down, we will never be a family again. I listened, the city lights reflecting off the window in front of me. When they finally stopped speaking, I said, "The only thing I can't save you from the consequences you created." I hung up before they could reply. I stood by the glass for a long time after that, watching the snow coat the rooftops until the world outside blurred into white. Snow hides everything, softens everything, makes even broken things look clean. But I wasn't looking for ways to hide anymore. I wasn't looking for softness. I had stepped onto a path I could no longer turn back from. And whatever waited at the end of it, answers, consequences, truths, I was ready to face it. Because for the first time, I wasn't walking toward my parents' version of my life. I was walking toward my own. By the time I left Gareth's office that night, I felt emptied out in a way I'd never experienced before, like someone had scraped out everything inside me and left only the shell behind. My grandfather called as I sat in the car, hands shaking on the steering wheel. His voice was firm but gentle. "Go to the cabin in Snowmass. Rest tonight. Tomorrow will be the hardest day." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. Something was coming, something bigger than the loans, the forged signatures, the financial wreckage. Something older, something personal. The road up the mountain was dark, and the storm rolling in made the snow swirl like ghosts across my headlights. My mind spun with every mile. My mother's words about my birth sharp as broken glass. My father's cold voice telling me to stop before things got worse, and my grandfather's silence when I asked what they were hiding. The wind pushed against the car, and for a moment I wondered what would happen if I just turned around and pretended none of this was happening. But pretending was what kept me trapped for 26 years. I kept driving. The cabin appeared just after a bend in the road, a small wooden structure tucked under towering pines, snow blanketing the roof. Inside it was warm, quiet, untouched. The air smelled like cedar and a life that didn't belong to me but somehow calmed me anyway. I shut the door behind me and the silence pressed in on my ears. No cars, no city noise, no lies. Just the truth, waiting on the table. Therese had left a box of documents, records I had asked for but wasn't sure I was ready to face. I poured tea and opened the first folder. My birth certificate. My eyes scanned it mechanically at first, but then I noticed the discoloration along the mother's name, a faint smear, a line of ink that didn't match the rest. Something had been erased, replaced, altered. My stomach twisted. I checked the hospital records, my discharge form, my earliest medical papers. They didn't match the timeline my parents always told me. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. If Bryn wasn't my mother, then who was? Why had they taken me out of love? Out of obligation? Or because a child with no paper trail was easier to use? Before I could think further, tires crunched outside. Headlights cut through the snow. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. Two figures stumbled toward the cabin, coats dusted with white movements, frantic and determined. I didn't need the light to see who they were. My parents. My father pushed through the door first, his face flushed with anger and desperation. "We need to talk," he said. "Now." My mother slipped in behind him, her hair wet, her eyes wild. She shut the door quickly as if the truth might blow in with the storm. "You have to stop this," she said, voice trembling. "You're destroying us." I stepped back. "Why are you here to save what's left of this family?" my father snapped. "Withdraw your statements. End the audit. We can fix this. Fix what I asked. What you stole. What you forged. What you lied about." My mother's hand shook. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If you keep going the truth about your birth, then tell me," I said. "Right now." "What truth?" My father's face twisted with frustration. "If it weren't for us, you wouldn't even have a life worth fighting for. We took you out of a mess you can't imagine." The words hit me like a slap. "Took me," I repeated. "What does that mean?" My mother covered her face and finally broke. "You weren't ours," she said. "You were never ours? We took you in when you were a baby, but not legally." She wiped her eyes. "Your mother didn't want you. We thought keeping you quiet would protect everyone." My breath left my body. "Not legally. Not theirs. You kept me quiet because you were afraid," I said slowly. "Afraid that if my real family found me, they'd take me back. Afraid of losing your pretty financial disaster." My father looked away. For the first time, I saw the truth without the lies layered over it. They didn't keep me because they loved me. They kept me because I was useful. Because a child with no records is easy to shape, easy to silence, easy to claim. My mother stepped forward, voice cracking. "When you were 17, someone contacted us. They wanted to know if you were okay. And you blocked them," I said. "Didn't you?" She nodded. Slowly, shamefully, every part of me fractured. Not only had they stolen my adulthood, they had stolen my beginnings too. "I'm done," I said. "I won't save you anymore." My father's voice rose desperate. "If you do this, we're finished." "We've been finished for a long time," I said. I turned away and called my grandfather. When he answered, I told him everything. He didn't sound surprised, only tired. I knew he said, "And I'm sorry. But now the truth is yours. Use it to build your life, not theirs." When the call ended, I opened the cabin door. The wind whipped snow into my hair and stung my cheeks. I looked back at the two people who raised me and realized they were just strangers with familiar faces. I stepped outside and let the cold hit me like baptism. For the first time in years, I felt awake. I chose the truth over the comfort of a lie. And once you do that, there's no going back. The morning of the hearing in Pitkin County felt unreal. The sky was pale, the air thin and cold enough to bite through my coat. But something inside me felt strangely steady. This time, I wasn't walking into court alone. My grandfather walked beside me, Therese and Gareth just a step behind. They formed a quiet wall around me, a wall my parents had spent years convincing me I didn't deserve. Inside the courthouse, my parents sat on the opposite bench. They didn't look like the people who raised me. They looked like people whose entire world had slipped through their fingers. My mother's hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white. My father's jaw was clenched so hard it shook. They were both dressed simply as if trying to look smaller, softer. It didn't work. The judge entered and the clerk began reading the list of charges connected to my name: fraudulent credit lines, unauthorized loans, identity misuse, the attempt to offload their bankruptcy under my record. Each accusation felt like peeling back another layer of the life they'd wrapped around me. Then came the part I knew they feared most. Gareth submitted the audio recording from the cabin. The room fell silent as their own voices filled the space, my father insisting they had saved me, my mother admitting they had hidden the truth of my birth, both of them acknowledging they had used my identity for financial gain. When the recording ended, neither of them spoke. Neither of them could. The judge turned to me next. "Miss Vale, do you have anything you wish to say?" I stood, hands trembling but voice steady. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want my life back. I want my name to mean something that belongs to me. I want the chance to build a future that isn't tied to their mistakes." My throat tightened. "I want freedom." The judge nodded and shifted his attention to my parents. Their responses blurred into excuses, fear, desperation, stress, none of which made the truth any smaller. None of which rewrote what they had done. The decision came quickly. The court ordered all assets tied to their fraudulent use of my identity frozen. A portion was to be transferred to me as reparations. They were barred from using my information again. And the investigation into their financial conduct would continue independently. My father stood up, shouting, calling the judgment unfair, claiming I had turned my back on family. A bailiff stepped forward, and he was escorted out before he could reach me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of his anger. It had no power over me anymore. When it was over, my mother approached me in the hallway. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You'll be alone after this," she said. I looked at her and felt something inside me settle. "I've been alone in this family my whole life," I said, "but now I get to choose who stands with me." Outside, the air felt crisp and clean. I hadn't won anything extravagant, but I'd won something essential myself. My grandfather handed me a plain envelope. "This belongs to you," he said. Inside was the contact information of my biological family, people who had once tried to find me but never could. I held the envelope close to my chest but didn't open it. Not yet. Some truths need the right moment. That night, I moved fully into the Lone Tree apartment. The lights were warm, the furniture quiet, the walls waiting for a new story. I hung one of my own paintings above the couch, watched its colors glow in the dim light, and for the first time in my life, the space around me felt like home. Not borrowed, not stolen, not held together by fear or lies. Mine. I curled up on the couch and let the stillness settle. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt gentle, steady. A soft inhale after years of holding my breath. I thought about everything I lost. Illusions, lies, the version of family I once prayed for, and realized none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was what I had reclaimed. My name, my story, my future. And as I whispered to myself before turning off the lights, I'm done mourning what broke me. I'm ready to live what's mine. I finally believed it.